back. Roundtable top 185 to 81. Again, you saw the title. The movie's already out there. So we're talking Saving Private Ryan, The Red Shoes from 1948, Scream. I just mentioned The Prisoners, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So those are the movies that we will go over tonight. We're supposed to have Bill Cariola here because if you know that man, he loves Scream. I wanted him on. The sickness got him, or Scream got him. Not 100%, but hope you're well. This will release in a month. I'm hoping you're feeling better by then. First up, my co-host, which I probably need to rearrange, Kirk Kowalkowski. He's just miserable. He's just having a miserable time with this plot and decision. I don't know if he'd rather do the old show YLS versus doing this version of the show. But I'm interested to see how you feel, because I know personally how you feel about one of these movies, pretty much. But how are you doing tonight? Best movies of all time. We're only in the 80s.
Yeah, I was listening to this week's episode of Regular Roundtable, and I was honestly thinking I'd rather just talk about A Tale of Two Kitties as a random normal movie that somebody wanted to talk about than talk about some of these movies in the context of the greatest of all time. So I was going to ask it on normal roundtable just for a break. So if you can make that happen for me, I'd love it. But yeah, let's see how bad this ruins my day.
Yeah, I definitely got you as long as you're doing okay with doing 2 a month. But yes, we'll get you on normal roundtable. Next up, John. Not that I picked him particularly. I like him. I like how he. He made me suffer on a show. I didn't make him really suffer, so I brought him on this one. I actually like hearing his movie opinion, so I'm curious how he felt. And I think Scream is kind of in his realm, whether I like it or not. So I'm curious to actually hear a deep discussion on how he feels about that movie. How are you doing, John?
Good, and I just want to make everybody know that I did not make Cody suffer on purpose. The purpose of the show is all the guests suffer. He knew that going into it. He agreed to it, so that's fine. And when I was on Roundtable the last time, I gave him a movie he liked. So I think as far as this show goes, I've been kind and I've been respectful of the medium. So, but I'm excited to talk about these movies. I only really kind of don't like one of them. The other four I like. So,
yeah, I'm interested to see which one that one is. Jack, correct me if I'm wrong. This is going to be a weird episode for Jack. We'll see how long he's here, if he's going to make it the entire time, how his audio, video. So we're working with borrowed time. But I believe this is your number one acting performance of all time is in one of these movies. Is that accurate, or was I wrong?
At the time, at a point in time, it may have been, but things have changed. I'm working on a different list of that, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
But how are you overall?
I'm doing well. I'm doing this episode in a car before an Oilers game, so it should be a really fun time. And talk about 3 movies that I had at 5 stars before this, and 2 at 4.5. So maybe those ratings changed coming into this episode.
All right. Basically, how the show will work is we will discuss. We will discuss all 5 episodes, how the community has ranked them. I have no personal opinion. I have personal opinions on the movies, but what I don't have is a personal opinion on where these movies landed on the list. We will discuss them. We'll talk about them. We'll re-rank them at the end. Again, the criteria is the best films of all time and where they are ranked. 30 submissions was how this list was created. Was majority of them in the early 20s when they submitted this? Probably. But at the end of the day, this is the list that we got. And we're gonna go through it. So first one up, Saving Private Ryan, Spielberg, war epic. Yeah, I'm curious what everybody thinks. I'm assuming everybody's seen this movie prior. I don't think this one snuck up past anybody like this indie darling. Yeah, I'm curious because again, I have thoughts, but I'm curious what you guys think. So, what were your guys' take on a revisit and under those spectrums of best of all time? How does it rank for you guys?
This is still one of my favorite movies ever made. It's my second favorite Spielberg. It's got some of the best depictions of warfare, in my opinion, in movies. The opening sequence is one of the most iconic opening scenes, or I guess it's the second scene, but whatever. You know what I mean. The D-Day landing, one of the greatest scenes in movie history for me. And I love every performance in this movie, from Tom Hanks to Matt Damon's smaller role. This just hits on every level for me. I love it.
I'll just say that I actually hadn't seen Saving Private Ryan until this. So there's a ton of movies when it comes to me that you'd be shocked that I hadn't seen. I mean, I know.
Oh, that's great though. That's great though. Like, that's exciting.
I know all about Saving Private Ryan. Like, I could tell you what it was about before watching it.
Yeah.
And watching it, I agree with Jack. I think the D-Day invasion scene is incredibly well shot. I can't say, I don't know if it's realistic or not. It wasn't there. But as far as I can tell from, archival footage and like other movies, it seems to like really capture it. Really like a totally like absolutely tragic movie in the sense that, like, the mission, what you needed to do to complete the mission and the price you pay to complete the mission hit me a lot. It's as an American, I appreciate Saving Private
Ryan. Kirk?
To speak to what John said a little bit, I remember the movie came out, they were interviewing D-Day survivors, soldiers who were there, and what the consensus was the only thing it didn't capture was the smell. Other than that, they said it was a pretty good representation of what happened. And what I noticed on this time was like the sound mixing, how like you never really hear the dialogue is like just not loud enough. Like, I was just cranking up my volume because everything else is so loud that the speaking parts were just a little bit lower. And I think that really added to the fact of like, that's, I'm sure they couldn't hear each other. There's just total confusion. So I think that was a pretty cool take. It just a million little things you notice, and they're all kind of like depressing and sad and bloody. But in all the battle scenes, not just that one, but just that, the visceral gore of it, just how ugly and violent. I rewatched this with my dad because my dad really likes this movie. And, we were just sitting there just like, man, how could you keep going? Like these guys on the beach and, they're just getting shot at, and they just kept moving and they just kept going. And just like, everybody gets mad at the guy at the end for kind of just chickening out. But I think that would be most of us. That would probably be how I would react in that situation, to be honest with you. So it's just crazy to think that this really happened. And I love the fact that it mixes those huge battle scenes with like some really good character moments. I like all the little cameos. I love Giamatti in this movie, just playing like the most Paul Giamatti World War II character possible, complaining about his knees and, just trying to get to the next thing. Ted Danson, Nathan Fillion, all those little roles are really cool. And I love just how like the last hour of it just becomes, the Dirty Dozen, and they got like a very specific, underdog mission to complete. So yeah, I think it's just it's one of those movies where it's held so high. And I think Schindler's List kind of is in that same realm where it's like, you don't think of it when you think about like your favorite movies because it's kind of like in a different category of thing. But it is just a really, overall fantastic movie.
So I'm curious because this is what I thought. Like, there are a lot of movies out there that I'm not saying this is a one scene movie. That's not what I'm trying to get at. But the one scene carries a lot of weight into the rest of this movie. So like, I always feel like, I don't know how you guys feel when you watch a movie, but when there's a scene that is just like next, hasn't seen before, interesting, like mind blowing, does that play a factor in the rest of the movie for people? Like, does that carry some weight into, like, for example, it's already been on the show, A Few Good Men, right? Few Good Men could be sitting around an average star rating for some people. That last scene happens. That movie's an all-timer. This movie, okay, it's a war film. That scene, I can't get that out of my brain because that scene is insane. It's like 20 minutes of just pure like carnage of what they went through. It helps like I always treat it like the rest of that movie is okay, but that one scene though, that one scene carries a lot. So I was just curious, does that ever weigh into either one of your guys' factor, like when you're watching the movie?
For this movie, no, I would say, only because like every character in I don't know what the size that unit, every character in that unit is a well fleshed out character. Like I totally relate with Ed Burns just being like, what the fuck are we doing? Like why? There's one dude. Like we're all gonna die for this one dude. I was like, that's who I'm Ed Burns in this movie because I would definitely be like, I don't care if you're my superior officer. Like why do we all gonna die? We're saving one guy. So and like and every character has that thing about them. It makes it all the more tragic when like they get like basically like decimated at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I think to what you're saying, Cody, I feel like it helps that that's the beginning of the movie because it's almost like its own thing. It's like a prelude, and you get that opening battle. It sets the stage for all these characters, and then you go from there, and you get this character drama. So if the climactic battle was like the end of the movie, I think that might be more of an issue where that kind of steals the show. And the scene does still the show. That's what everybody talks about. But I feel like the fact that you get so much after that and so much builds off that, I don't think it is detrimental. Plus the fact I feel that final battle scene is also really, really good.
Yeah,
I feel like
bookended by two great battle scenes.
Yeah. So I don't, obviously it's not an iconic because it's not like a strictly a historical event. It's invented for this movie, obviously, but it's a very different kind of battle. And I think it's shot just as well. I think it has as many great like intense moments. So I don't think the D-Day scenes overshadow everything else.
Well, I heard a reviewer one time say it the best is like when those like that for like do your first scene like that makes more sense. What I was gonna say is like, so if you're gonna do a great scene, do it at the beginning because like it won't carry much at the end, which is interesting because like I agree with you on that one because the movies that I was coming up with in my brain was that they were bookend movies, like they were bookend scenes. So like they lifted the movie higher than where it was. I could never think of one that was at the beginning. So they were able to pay off that beginning, which makes it interesting. The only problem I have with this movie, and I think I've told Kirk this before. I've vented about this. The only issue I have, and it's the most nitpicky thing ever in this entire movie. It carries zero weight. But when they're in the very beginning, right before the beginning of the movie, Matt Damon's character is sitting there. He does a flashback to D-Day, which he is not a part of at all, which is the most nitpick thing ever. Like he's looking back like, oh, I remember it. No, you don't. You were not present. They survived D-Day to save your ass. I was just like, it's one of the most nitpicky things, but I was just like, what are we talking? Like,
I think it's a bait and switch because I think we're supposed to believe that's Tom Hanks.
Yeah, I know.
And then it's like, oh, it was him all along. So yeah, but no, because I always thought they did it worse because I remembered it like from the old man at the beginning. I thought they faded into Tom Hanks's face, and I remembered it wrong. I'm glad they didn't do that because that would have been just too much. But yeah, I mean, I guess, it is weird. Like it's a storytelling kind of trick, but
horror, like war movies especially, I think are so crucial to be successful is the time outside of war. Like if like you can give me action scenes all day long and those would be cool, but like if I don't care about who's dying, I don't care like that much of the movie. Like I always think of like Hacksaw Ridge is one that drops into my head. Not that it's not like there's good actors, right? But the only one you ever have an emotional connection with in that character is the main guy. Like, and he's dropping down, saving everybody, but he's saving a bunch of people that we have no clue who is. Like, I don't have a connection or I don't care. The only time I care is the one guy, and it's a real like we know he survived. So like at that point, it doesn't save me. This one is like, I think they're smart. They take out characters that you side with. But before they take them out, you have an emotional connection. Like you know about these characters, and I think that's just a smart thing on Spielberg, especially when you do a 2 hour and 40-minute movie to like have battles, but also do enough time to create a mission for one guy, but like. We're going to make you care about every character going to that guy, which I think is smart. So,
not only that,
Jack, sorry, I gave you the. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it's not even just how crucial each one of them is, like how each one of them kind of has a specialty. Like when, like obviously, Private Jackson, Barry Pepper is like the man, and like when he gets blown up in the tower, you're like, oh, they're fucked. Like they're done. Like so, like every person is like special, not like well acted, but also they're special too. They're militarily special.
And I think the one thing too I think is cool about this movie is as much like death and like just brutalization of human life you see, like death is never like taken for granted. Like no one's it's not desensitized to the point where like it doesn't matter if somebody dies. Even like I think about the one scene where they're with Giamatti and they're sending that runner to send a message, and he gets shot down, and like Vin Diesel's like angry that they're still shooting him. Like human life still matters to these people, and I think that feeds so much into the characters that they have. You know, they're desensitized to the violence, I think, but not to the loss of life.
Mm-hmm.
Jack, I never had you answer that question originally about the scenes and stuff. What was your take on that?
I think it's definitely possible. I spent most of the time that John and Kirk were talking about it trying to think of a movie where the one scene really carries it for me. And every single one of the ones I thought of, like A Few Good Men, like you brought up, the scenes are at the end. I don't think a movie ever has one at the beginning that really carries my opinion all the way through. All the way through the film. So, yeah, no, I think I agree with the three of you pretty wholeheartedly with that.
I know I'm going to sound like a 13-year-old boy here when I say this, but that sniper scene through the eye is still arguably the coolest shot. That's like, if it's not like a moment, I don't know what is. Like, it's so creepy. One, I think it's a bad shot, personally. Like, if you're in the military, like, you aim a little higher, you're guaranteed to hit it. Like, you could hit the gun, the bolt deflects, nothing. Like, something could have changed, in my opinion, but, like, it's such a cool scene. He does so well with shots in this, like, season.
I think that's the only death in the movie. Like I said, like, I don't think there's any death. Every time someone is killed in this scene, I think there's weight to it. I think that's the one in the whole movie where you're like, yes, like, that's a cool death.
Yeah.
And even at the beginning of the film when they're at D-Day and you get the two surrendering soldiers that aren't German, their deaths aren't like big fuck yeah moments because you think they're German soldiers or whatever. No, they're just two random dudes that were shot while surrendering, and it's those deaths also impact you in that moment because you're just like, fuck. Like immediately afterwards.
Yeah. So, in the terms of best of all time, can you make a case for this one to be considered? Because I think it's very hard. Because my thing is, I think people created a top 20 list to submit this. Everybody has their different criteria for where it goes. Like, if I was making a list, what I would try to do if I made a list is, yes, I'd pick best movies, but I would also try to hit genres across the way. Like, give me the best of a comedy, give me a best of a war film. And this, I struggle to see, like, in my brain, a better war movie off the top of my head than Saving Private Ryan. I know there are ones. I know there's considerations. I know all that stuff. But I am curious where you guys sit. Like, this is John's first viewing. So for him to be able to say, yeah, it's the greatest movie, probably not going to be the case because he's seen a ton of movies. But I'm just curious, where would this one sit for you guys?
Yeah, this one's definitely, I believe I could be wrong. I think this was on the list I submitted. I submitted my top 20 at the time when you were taking lists, and I believe this was on there. I think it's undoubtedly the greatest war movie ever made, in my opinion, and I can absolutely make a case for it to be in this list. I think it belongs here and honestly should probably be higher.
I think it's really good. I don't know if it's my favorite war movie ever. It's really, really good, though. There's definitely war movies that I go to off the top of my head that I like better than I like this movie. I would say that.
Yeah.
But if somebody told me like this is my favorite movie, I wouldn't even argue with them. Like, all right, I can appreciate that opinion. I can see that. I can see somebody saying that.
And yeah, I feel like
on Jack's list.
When I made my list, I didn't consider it. I never had it on a top 100 or anything, but I definitely think you can make an argument for it. Personally, for me, I think it's because it's one of those ones that held. It's like such like a prestige movie that, as I said in the beginning, it's kind of its own category. It's not one I personally go back to or think about a lot. But technically, it's well made. It's a good story. It's well acted. So yeah, I'm not going to say this doesn't belong in a or wouldn't belong, or you couldn't make an argument for this to be in the top 100.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you think about this movie because this is one that I always forget about, which is weird. But then when I watch it, I'm happy I watched it. I don't know, but I feel better watching. I honestly believe the first 20 minutes is very hard to watch. And I have to be emotionally ready for that 20 minutes, and then the rest of the movie it's a drag. It's got good moments, it's got funny moments, but it's sad. It has emotional weight throughout the entire movie. So I have to be if you're going to make me sit down for 2 hours and 30 minutes to 2 hours 40 to sit there and watch it, I've got to be. And I'm curious, this is at the time, John and Kirk believe were this has got the Oscar I would say it was made for Oscar consideration for sure. It just didn't win the big prize because of Shakespeare in Love, which is the conversation for another time. But yeah, I feel like it's I feel like this was the 1917 of that time. Not saying it was stylistic, but definitely created for some Oscar buzz. It wouldn't make sense. What's Spielberg going to do next? Let's do a war epic and see if he can pull it, and he does. So yeah, and I think Spielberg's weight also carries into that top 100 conversation. I feel like stuff he does, like Scorsese, like Tarantino, can just get that moniker of being that kind of director. So yeah. Anything else we want to say?
Going back, I think that Oscar discourse has hurt both movies, has hurt the legacy of both movies, because I think they both have value beyond that, a lot of value beyond who won the award. But yeah, when it came out, I remember Spielberg was doing free screenings for high schools and movie theaters and stuff. So there was a lot of that kind of buzz, and I think goes back to my argument. Not against it, but why I feel the way I do about it is because it's almost like more of a historical document than a movie in a lot of ways. It was made for such a level of realism and to capture that certain thing that you really don't even think of it as a movie. Sometimes you think of it as something beyond and made for a different purpose.
It's one of those things that's kind of it's one of those cop-out Oscar years, I guess, where he still won Best Director. So. It's they kind of do that sometimes. All right, we're gonna give this movie Best Picture, but we're gonna split it and give this person Best Director, which is kind of your runner-up to Best Picture. So I think that's kind of what they did that year. And then also, just me, and I don't know if you guys agree. I kind of weight the war being depicted as to whether I like the movie. I tend to like Vietnam War movies better than I like World War II movies, just for some reason. And I think if you ask me what my favorite war movies, all the Vietnam movies are gonna come up before World War II movies. That's just me.
I feel the reason for that, John, and I don't mean to analyze you here, but I think the reason for that, anyone would feel that way, I think because Vietnam movies are so much more questionable. When you go to a World War II movie, because they're fighting Nazis, so those are definitely the good guys, those are definitely the bad guys. There's a lot more gray area in a Vietnam movie to play around with. I think that makes for a lot of times more interesting stories.
I think maybe the Vietnam vet, but my dad is, so that was a big deal growing up in my house.
I honestly think it also is the type of fighting.
Yes.
This is storm, trenches, still battlefields, stuff like that. Vietnam's the jungles. You're fighting, and it can pop out anywhere. So I definitely don't disagree. I think I like learning about World War II more, but I think I gravitate towards Vietnam movies more. So that's the handoff. So
I think World War II, you have so many different, you have the German front, you have the Asia front. Germany was in Africa. There's so many different ways you could approach World War II. Whereas Vietnam was everyone's in the Vietnamese jungle just doing shit. That's pretty much it.
Absolutely. So do we do this letterbox scoring? We'll just get our scores out right now. Jack, what is your rating on this?
It's a 5-star movie for me. Definitely, if not still top 20, definitely top 30. It's one of the greatest of all time for me.
I don't know if you heard me. You put it at 18 on your list.
Fair enough.
Which it's better than some of the things you have higher, but we'll talk about that later. Kirk.
I'll go 4 stars on this one. Very solid, good movie.
Yeah, I always hover around 4.5, 5. Just because like 5, I have like 5 is like a weird situation because I think it's like a great movie, but it's like how I feel in the moment and like rewatchability. It sucks. Like if it, I don't run back to it as much as I probably could or should. But I'm sitting about 4.5, 5. I think it's going to still be a 5 for me though. And first time watch. So I'm curious, John, what's yours?
I put it at 4.5. I totally appreciate this movie, and it's mostly the character work, to be honest with you. Like the battle scenes are great, but I love the characters in this movie, so it was a 4.5 for me.
Okay. So we're going to the next one. I don't know where everybody else will sit. The Red Shoes, 1948, Pressburger, Powell. This is the first time watch for me. Who else was the first time watch? Oh, I'm the only one. Great. So I'm sitting in the room. So I'm just going to get this out of the way. Nope. I do not like this movie. I do not like this movie at all. I can appreciate this movie. Like I know what it's going for. I just don't gravitate to the subject matter at all. I'm a basic paint by numbers guy. This is not a basic paint by numbers movie. To some extent, like I can get why, but like it's goofy. It's out there. It's weird. I just don't gravitate towards that shit at all. I don't like the ballet at all. Like I would rather lay down in the tracks than go to a ballet ever in my life. I promise you that. But like shot beautiful, like kind of like great performances. Like I get everything around this. It's just doesn't go. Like it never gets out of first gear for me. Like it's just like stuck and like some overacting I would consider like and I think that's for design, so that's not like a bad thing. Like I know that's from the design. Like these are not like the worst actors in the world just overacting for fun. I think that's what the premise of the movie was for me. But yeah, you guys have all seen it. But top 100, like this is like my favorite director of all time is Martin Scorsese. He raves about this movie. I think he was part of like the restoration project for this movie, like to get it like upgraded and stuff like that, which is great. Hats off to you. I'm just so happy he made the movies he did and not this shit. Like he's inspired by so much and he doesn't make that weird shit, and I'm so happy for it. Like I'll take the gangster movies any day of the week. But you guys, this is a revisit. Also like is this considered like somebody listed this as like a horror movie? This is not a horror movie.
It has horror elements as the horror guy. Okay, like the fact that like if we're gonna go with the angle of like, do the shoes possess Vicky to the point? Then yeah, for the 1940s, this is a horror movie. By the 2020 standards, this is not a horror movie. It's a dance drama romance movie, I guess.
Because I always like when I looked at this, like, so my dad growing up told me one movie was the scariest movie that's ever existed. It was The Exorcist. Like, this movie is the scariest movie you're ever seen. I watched it. Dad, you're a pussy. Not scary at all. But like I could imagine like his dad being like, "You need to watch The Red Shoes. This movie is freaky and weird." No, it's not. But because horror, continues over time, like it changes. So that's just interesting. No, but I'm curious what you guys take. This is like this could be multiple watches, or like this could be your second watch. I'm just curious where you guys sit and where you rank it in the realm of greatest of all time.
I'll go first. This is my second watch, only because I used to partner with somebody in Melee who had Powell and Pressburger as their strength, so I watched all those movies. It's not like I was like, oh, The Red Shoes. Obviously, it's a movie that I return to all the time. I'm with Cody. I don't like this movie, and I can find a ton of reasons not to like this movie. From a horror standpoint, I'll say one thing that bothers the shit out of me is she gets run over by a goddamn train at the end of the movie, and they pull her body out, and she's just got like soot and scratches on her. I'm like, there should be nothing left of that woman at the end of the movie. She got run over by. They go in between the cars of the train to get her, and they pull her out. It's a regular body. I was like, I'm done, and that's like the last frame of the movie too. So I was like, at that point, I was done before that point, but that made me more done at that point. Jack, defend it.
I think this movie is kind of great. I love the cinematography in it. I love the performance. Like you said, they're overacting. Yes, they absolutely are, and I love it. I don't. The only thing holding this movie back for me is the first 20 minutes are very slow, and it takes a while to like get into it. But other than that, I'm pretty much fully dialed into the movie. I think that the ballet sequence is kind of perfect. Like I said this to I think I sent a message to Melissa and Alex when I was rewatching the movie. That scene is one of the most perfect scenes ever put to film, in my opinion, and it could have been the entire second half of the movie, and I would not have complained. I'm weird. I don't know, but I really enjoyed this movie, and it stays at 4.5 stars on my rewatch. I love this movie. Do I consider it greatest of all time? Not necessarily, but I get why people would.
I don't know when I asked for scores yet, sir. Good sir.
I apologize.
Okay. Kirk, so we have a hate, we have a perfect, almost perfect. Where are you sitting?
I think I'm the opposite of you and John, where I can understand why someone would be watch this movie and be like, "This is not for me." Like this, there's a lot there, especially watching through a modern lens, where it's like, I could do without this. But I do think I can see what Scorsese sees in this movie and all the people who rave about it. I just love like the opening credits. Like tell you the story of the movie. It's like starts out like Technicolor and costumes by and set direction by and choreography. So what everything you're getting in this movie. I just think like when you look at film as a visual medium, like this like just takes it all together and puts together something that's like so great to look at. I just love the Technicolor. I love like the performance are a little over the top. I think for me honestly in Powell and Pressburger movies, the characters are usually always the weakest part, and I think that's true in this movie too. But I feel like they serve that, like as Jack was saying, that bigger story and that bigger picture. And yeah, once that ballet gets going, it's that ballet is one of my favorite things I've seen in the movie. I think just the way that looks, when it's choreographed, the cinematography, the color, the set design. I love the way it moves in and out of reality. Like at some point, you're seeing what's actually on stage. And then it on a dime, it'll turn and become the fantasy and then turn back into the dance again. I love the way that plays out. And yeah, it just, I feel like it's not my personal top 100. I didn't put it on my top 20. But I definitely think it's a movie that deserves to be on a list like this.
The Technicolor aspect, and this may bite me in the ass because I've defended like color added and stuff. It just looks fake as shit. Like, it doesn't look real. Like, it looks overly fake. And I just think as the more I learn about Jack, he's just a cinematographer, ho. And that's fine. Like, you're good to know that. But, like, he just loves a good shot. He just loves a beautiful film. Like, and that's fine. And this is the more I'm learning. I could care less. Like I kind of like I lean towards, like, I like 70s movies. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying they don't have, like, good cinematography. But they look gritty as shit. Like, they just look like they're shot like gritty, and that's what I kind of just. But that's like, I don't care if it's like. I just want the story to be good. Yeah, that train sequence. I was going to bring up the same thing. I was like, oh my, okay. But again, he said this. I can't deny the ballet scene's like cool, like absolutely incredible. I just don't care. Like, at that point, and I'll be. You're saying the first 20 minutes. I would argue the first 50 minutes is slow as his shit, because I sat there and I was like, man, this movie's it's almost over. It's been. I've been here like 2 hours at this point. Like, that's fine. I looked down. It's 50 minutes. I said, and the thing is, like, I hate when a director has one of these movies for me that's out of my taste because like I think like A Matter of Life and Death is like one of those movies that I absolutely just like rave over. I think it's a fantastic movie. I love everything about it. And it's from this director because I was like, I'm just going to deep dive in. Very second movie, I watched The Red Shoes. All right, I'm out. The Matter of Life and Death is the only good work these two men have done. I am over it. I'm moving on. But you know, it just sucks. But like, no. And when I said that, like Scorsese, like when I say that I don't understand, like when he's so like this, it's just there are definitely things I can pick up that he got influenced on and stuff like that. But like I'm so happy he didn't like go down this medium. Like he could have been like a creative, like out there director, and he just kind of just like give me a real person, like give me a subject matter that I can just write a movie on. So I'm good about that.
I think he got this movie out of his system with New York. That it's all there. That's where he got it out of his system. What I would say is like there's a few other things. I think all the good things that Jack and Kirk said, I agree with. I think the dance sequence, if this was like a 2-hour ballet captured on film, it would probably slay. You know, it would be great because that is presented fine. The cinematography is fine. The set design is great. However, this movie is presented as like a love triangle as well. There's a story as well, and that story sucks. These guys I mean, I'm not like a huge feminist, you know, color me not. But like if I was a feminist, this movie would offend me to no end because all these guys treat her as property and like dictate what her life is to be throughout the entire movie. And like that's the whole movie. Not to mention that Julian Craster is supposed to be a college student and he looks like he's older than me. So I'm also going to say that. And then I am done with my major gripes.
No, you're right. That's the one thing I meant to bring up is that the college students in this movie all look like they're 40 years old.
Yes.
Which is all of them, which is weird.
Like the creases in that forehead. I was like, when I was 20 years old, I didn't look like that at all.
Yeah. But
I just
also
find it. Oh,
I was just going to say real quick, I will defend the color, the Technicolor, because I think even though there is like a reality aspect of the movie, I think the whole thing is supposed to be, you know, reflective of fantasy and a fairy tale. So I agree with you. It does not look real, but I think that's part of the movie's charm. And I think just in general, like movies from that era that had that big, like otherworldly feel, like, whether it was like a big epic or whatever, a war movie, I think that the fact that color did make it look like it was otherworldly, I think adds in general to the charm of that era.
I guess the Technicolor helps in this movie more than it hurts in this movie because this movie is not normal. I just felt that as a whole, like when I watched, like, oh, this is a spot in a real life in Paris. Literally feel like I'm in like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Like, why is this so goofy looking? Like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. I watched that the one day and I was like, what this doesn't look like Oregon at all. Like this isn't, you can't tell me this is Upper Washington. Like this is, we're in Goofyville. No, but like one, it's too long. Like, let's be real. This movie's way too long for what the subject matter is. I don't know. Like, I could never imagine just popping this in on a Sunday and be like, we're gonna watch The Red Shoes. Like, not a chance. Not. And I'm not a length like in movies. My favorite, like most of my favorite movies are pushing 3 hours or over it. Like, I'm cool with long. It's just if I'm not in, it's hard to get me back in once I've lost it. So, and everybody knew I was gonna hate this movie. Like, no one said like Kirk said it was like not gonna be a good one for you, buddy. Like he knew right off the gate. Is there any more positives you guys want to bring up from this? Because I don't want to just dog it because I'm like leading this and I'm like BS. Cool shoes.
I mean, I imagine. Okay, here's a positive. I imagine this level of society, like top level choreographers, top level directors, top level composers. I imagine these people are actually within a standard deviation of not overacting. I believe this is probably accurate. I've met a few of these people who are like artists and they act like that. So I believe that's actually more accurate than we've been saying. Like they're drama queens straight up.
I think it's very impressive that this came out in 1948. I think that all the time. When I see movies like this from like that time period, like how, like we'll talk about a movie later, like what the crap? Like this makes no, like Like, maybe they were smarter. I don't know. But this is like, if this came across like a person, this is like a movie that came across the producer's desk today. They're like, absolutely, send that to A24 tomorrow. We'll get it produced. We'll get this going. I can just see a bunch of like oil tycoons sitting like, red shoes, no thank you. Bring out the war. Like, why are we talking about shoes? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And like, yeah, I always find it like, I always think it's just muscle twirling guys in the 40s. They're like, nah, thank you. Bring me, smack a few women and send them back out. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I was gonna say, if you're a fan of Damien Chazelle, I think you owe this movie a very big thank you, because this is built very, like, you watch any Damien Chazelle movie and you're like, oh yeah, the red shoes, that's where this came from. So
makes sense why I didn't love it.
Yeah, there's some Whiplash in there. There's some La La Land. There's there's a little bit of G-rated Babylon. There's all kinds of things going on.
I'd rather the elephant show up on stage.
Yikes.
Okay, we'll get scores. Jack already told me 4.5.
4.5. Yep.
I'll go let John go first.
Again, I all the positives I treated as positives. Like, technically, it's really sound. So I couldn't, like, this movie's not like a total piece of shit, but it is like it's a 2.5. Like, it's just like everything that's bad about it. I don't enjoy this movie. I can appreciate this movie. I don't enjoy like a singular second of this movie at all. But I can tell you, I appreciate all of the men and women who came together to make costumes and build sets and score this thing and teach the people how to dance. Your work is not going. You earned all 2.5 of those stars, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody else blew it for you. If you're still alive,
Kirk.
Yeah, I'm on a personal level. I won't tell you guys you're wrong. I could totally see why you would not like connect with this movie. But for the context of what we're talking about here, I think it, like I said, I think it definitely deserves a spot, just for the technical aspects of it. I think usually Powell and Pressburger doesn't work for me, but I like this one. And it's not something I'm going to go back and like, hey, I'm going to watch this twice this weekend. It's not something I'll go back to probably for a while. But I think it definitely has a lot of merit, a lot of, value in the grand scheme of movies. So for me, it's a 4.
2.5. I'm going for John. That's where I'm sitting. I'm not going to put these movies low, like super, super low. That just doesn't make any sense. It's not for me. It was creative. It did its shot. It just missed way past me. It's not my movie. I'll be the reason it lowers a little bit on Letterboxd, and somebody can come at me. It's fine. The next one. This will be probably the civilest conversation that we'll ever have on this show of all time. We are talking about Scream. 1996. So I will start with this. Kirk, where do you want to go in this spot? Do you want to go last? Do you want to go first? Do you want to go middle? You want to get your thoughts out? Do you want to defend why Matthew Lillard deserved the Oscar that year?
I'll go first. It's fine.
Okay.
We'll rip the Band-Aid off. Listen, again, like Cody has said several times tonight, we're talking about greatest movies of all time. Scream, I always thought was a fun movie. It came out like I was the perfect age when this came out. I remember going to see it. I think it's kind of, with the fact that like the franchise going on, in my opinion, has not gone in a good direction. We've had, parodies of this satire. So I think we've kind of like moved on from it in a lot of ways. I don't think it's a bad movie. But if, for it to be in this spot, that means several people had on their list. If you think Scream is one of the 20 best movies of all time, please do me a favor and go watch your 21st movie. I'll go even further. If you think Scream is one of the 20 best horror movies of all time, go watch your 21st horror movie. Like I said, it's not terrible. I think it's clever. It's not nearly as clever as it's constantly trying to convince you that it is. It has that 90s Dawson's Creek, Kevin Williamson's dialogue that makes my teeth hurt when I listen to it. Just the fact that you're like admitting that characters are making dumb mistakes and that your characters are dumb doesn't make them any less dumb. I think the acting across the board is really rough. Yeah, come on.
What about Matthew Lillard?
Yeah, public enemy number 2. But no, yeah, this movie. Like I said, I hate coming on here and having to bash movies that I've never had a problem with. But if you're trying to tell me that Scream is one of the 100 greatest movies of all time, we really have a problem.
Okay. In your incessant rambling, you were nowhere near a correct answer. You had award you no points and may God have mercy on your soul. Scream's fucking awesome. Okay? Scream's fucking awesome. I've lived in this world that I Sidney Prescott, the queen of the doors. If there's a door in a house, she's not dying. She is the undefeated queen of getting through doors and slamming it in Ghostface's face. It works in every movie. The thing is, I'm a sucker for this franchise. I don't like one of these movies. It's number 3. I just don't because it's so dumb to me. But the rest of them, goofy, fun, laugh out loud. I love Matthew Lillard in this movie. I love Matthew Lillard. I joke about it all the time. He should have won an Academy Award. He is overacting at all the best parts for me. I love the play on it. Again, and I'm not a horror guy. So I bet for like horror fans, either they like this or they don't because it like parodies all the stuff that came before it, all the slashers, all the stuff like that. But I just think they do such a good job with it. And like, it plays into those facts of like I've seen all the Fridays and all the Nightmare on Elm Streets and all the I think I even have more appreciation for Scream now than I did when I didn't, like, of where they go and all the tropes and stuff that I didn't really pick up a million times I've watched Scream. Now I pick up on a little bit more of it. So I think it's interesting. And especially like all that 90s stuff. So not that he is the expert, but I consider him the expert. I'm going to go John next. I'm just curious, like, Scream when it came out in 96, what age, like, not to put your age on blast, but what age were you in 96 when Scream came out?
I'll put it in total context for you. By taking the Scream poster away from the movie theater I worked at, I was fired. There we go. Somebody else had claimed it, and I took it, and I was happy to lose my job over having the Scream poster. So that's how old I was.
Okay, that checks. Okay,
yeah, and I'm wearing this hat and whatever. That's just the hat I own. I think for me, I think Scream is more of an important movie than it is a great movie. And it's not that I'm going to rate it any lower than I'm going to rate it because I understand it in the context of the landscape of horror. Cody mentioned, like, he watched all the Fridays, he watched all the Nightmares, he watched all the Halloweens. You start to realize that a film like Scream was absolutely necessary. And for Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson to pull the trigger, I treat Scream as like the defibrillator paddles of the horror genre. Like, are the defibrillator paddles the most important or the best tool in a hospital? No, they're not. But when you use them, are they the most important tool in the hospital? Absolutely. Like, Scream came along at the perfect time and revitalized a genre that might never have done it. Because if you look at all the other slasher movies in the 90s, they are not even garbage. It is like, it's just shit. And like that's when you have like all the horror slasher villains have a job. The Ice Cream Man and Dr. Giggles and like all these guys, those were our slasher movies. There was good like elevated horror, I guess, from the time, like Candyman and stuff. But as far as slashers go, it was done until Scream came along. So yeah, is it a technically sound movie? Is it well acted? No, it's not. It's not. But it hits all the right notes. It's absolutely the hero we needed at the time it came along. So I appreciate it more than I like it, but my appreciation carries me way up the charts of how I rank it.
And I want to say this, Kirk, I'm 100% with you, though. Like, when I say that, like, I love this movie, and I think it's a fantastic movie. Do I think it's one of the best movies of all time? Absolutely not.
No,
like, I just don't. Like, do I think it's, like, of a time capsule? Like, it would be important? Like, but I feel like Scream also has to have that factor. Like, if you don't know a lot about horror, does it, like, it worked for me because, like, I'm easy to please, but like I don't know if it works for everybody. How John described it makes perfect sense because if I grew up in the 80s and 90s, like of horror, especially watching studios just like throw it out anytime they had a shot and like not even give it a second thought. Get the mask back out there, get the knife, get everybody, get a bunch of teenagers, and we're just going to recycle this thing, and it's not going to change. It's got to be the most frustrating thing in the world because like it gets on this like wheel that just doesn't stop. I think Scream also has a benefit because it was so fresh and something. Oh my god, they're making fun of themselves. They know it. Like what the guy that created Nightmare is creating this and making fun of what he created. Like it just works on that aspect. But I'm with you, Kirk. Like I'm not disagreeing. Like the movie itself, I love. But is it best? I don't think so.
If this was a regular episode of Roundtable and Jack just brought on for us to watch, I probably wouldn't be saying any of this stuff. But like I said, we're talking about it in this context, and I have to be. Because
I'm also a defender of Saw, right? Not a defender like I'm not telling you you're wrong if you don't like it, but I like Saw more than the average person. Saw 1, I love. I think it's creative, like great ending. I think they set up that world really well. Do I think it's the best of all time? No, like not at all. I think this is a classic movie that's in this list that crosses that line from best to favorite, and that's fine. You just failed the assignment, which is not a bad. Like I understand, I fail reading tests all the time. It's not. It can't be. It's not like. There's a movie that did not make this list that I consider like in the slasher genre. I think like 1978's Halloween is like I love that movie. Like I think it's great. That one's not on this list. Like in that regard, we're saying Scream is, and I'm not saying, and I'm the blank slate of horror. Like don't give me like John could list 17 other ones that probably deserve like the movie you brought on last time.
Let the right one in.
That could be in consideration if we're talking horror best. Like it's not on this list. So like those aspects. Jack, you're a defender of this, but do you remember if you had? I can check, but did you have Scream on your list?
I did not. I did not. It's never been one of my favorite movies of all time or anything like that, but it's one I have a deep appreciation for, and I can thank Tim Brzakala for that because after having to watch the Halloweens, the Nightmares, and the Fridays, just like you, Cody, I've appreciated this movie more and more every time after that. It has one of my favorite villain reveals in a horror movie with Stu and Bill.
You got it.
Bill, yeah. I don't know why my mind just drew a fucking blank there. I'm good. It's got one of my favorite reveals. Going in the first time I saw it, I had no clue what was coming. And it blew my mind, and it gets better every time I watch it. Something I picked up on this time that I hadn't in the previous watches, the score by Marco Beltrami is really good. I don't know why, but I just never really noticed it in like the quieter scenes in the movie. Like in the tense scenes, it's very present, and you can really it's almost impossible to ignore. This watch, it was, I could only pay attention to that at certain points. Like when Sydney first goes to school after Drew Barrymore is murdered, it is very in your face, but in the best way possible. I thought the score was fantastic in this time around. It's got some really great moments of tension. That opening scene is still one of the greatest of all time. I love it. It's a movie that just gets better every time I watch it, and it has one of my favorite cameos ever too, with Wes Craven as Fred Krueger. So, love that cameo.
I mean, I'll say too, like about what, and I agree with John. Like, it's an important movie. Like, if you look at like the timeline and history of horror movies, I think it's important where it's at. And if you came to me in 1996, I mean, I think I was a year out of high school at this point, And when walking out of the theater, I would have sung a very different song about this movie. But I think like you said, Cody, at the time it was fresh, but you look now and it's like we had the franchise going on. To me, I feel like the last couple movies, the franchise has become a parody of itself. I feel like we've had like literal parodies with the Scary Movie franchise. I feel. If someone comes to me right now and says, "Hey, recommend to me a movie that satirizes horror tropes and like comments on like the horror genre," 100 out of 100 times, I'm going to go tell them to watch Cabin in the Woods because I think that's a better movie. I think it's a more entertaining movie. I think it does that whole thing better. So I just feel like it surprises me that at this point, Scream is still held in such high regard because although it was important at the time and it made an important difference, I feel like it's run out of steam. Like what it did has completely run out of steam and kind of been lapped.
Yeah, there's at least 3 or 4 other movies that you didn't mention that do the deconstruction of horror better than Scream. But Scream was the first one to Scream fired the warning shot across the bow of horror. Where it's like, wake up, guys. We are literally putting out shit. Like we're putting out Uncle Sam and Jack Frost. Please stop. Like we can do so much better than this. And I think what's come after, I think some of the greatest horror movies that ever been made came after. And I think they owe it to Scream because if they didn't, the whole genre would have just absolutely tanked. Like out and out.
My dad is still in trouble for that Jack Frost moment. Instead of the family movie, pick the horror movie. That was a bad night for all of us. Okay, so I think we've talked about Matthew Lillard again. Put some respect on his name. Should have won the Oscars. Such a good thing. Like, you cut me real bad, man.
And let me just say, everybody I'm not surprised that like there's continually murders coming out of this town because everyone in Westboro is a sociopath. Like people are just being murdered and like just really making jokes. And like Cindy's best friend sitting there talking to her and compares like stories about her mother's promiscuity to the Richard Gere rat story, or gerbil story. And like just as you go on in the franchise, the fact that this town continues to like celebrate these murders, it's like just imagine if like Jeffrey Dahmer's hometown had like kids like every year like celebrate the Jeffrey Dahmer murders. It's insane.
Dressing up as Jeffrey Dahmer.
yeah,
and it went
insane.
to it took the 6th one to get them out of.
Yeah.
Well, Scream 2 was not in Woodsboro. Scream 2 was in Ohio.
That's true. You're not college. You're right. My bad. We'll get ratings on this one. We'll start with Jack if you're available.
Yeah, I'm just gonna hold my phone. This movie was a 4.5 for the longest time. This last watch bumped it up to 5 for me. I love this movie. I can definitely see it crossing into my top 100 favorites soon. It just hits on every level for me. I love it.
I'm at a 5 too, but like that's a 5 for me personally. Like that's not a 5 for the rest of the population. Like I love this movie. It's an always. I can just imagine like if I could drop myself into the little spots like going in to see Drew Barrymore on a poster and then people like thinking that she dies like that, I would love to like get live reactions to their thoughts like Drew Barrymore. Kirk.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, if you're mad about my rating, if you put this on your list, it's you have no one to blame for yourself because it's probably going down, forcing me to watch it in this context. I have it 2.5 now. Like I said, it's not a terrible movie, but it doesn't belong anywhere near this list.
I hate the red shoes. I'll tell you that much. John.
I want to echo some of the stuff Kirk said. But my rating is different. Is it a top 20 movie? No. Is it a top 100 movie? No. Is it a top 20 horror movie? No. Is it a top 100 horror movie? Maybe. Still a 5-star movie. Really? Just because a lot of my favorite movies owe their lives to this movie. So if someone saves your life, you give them 5 stars.
I can respect that.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one. I'm really curious what the panel will say about this. I guess we're kind of out of it. John said he only disliked one of these movies, and I think that was The Red Shoes. So we're on to Prisoners. Denis Villeneuve I'm curious where everybody's going to go in this movie. I will just lead. I love this movie, but I also love this type of like movie and like shubs. Like I like watch docs and stuff like that. I think true crime is really interesting. I think they do a real good spin on true crime. I think they set it up. I think the characters are really interesting. Um, I think Hugh Jackman's really good in this movie. Was he the greatest actor of all time? Like performance? No, I think Jack has grown up and watched other things. But like and I think, and this is not like shot at Jack or anything, but I think this is also like hits really close to home. It's like you have a kid or you have children. Like this is just like a parent's nightmare, like worst nightmare, like of all time. Like I could never fathom what he's going through in this movie. And I pray to God I never have to. But he's like there's a scene that I love, and I think I put it on my top 100 scenes because I think it's that good. Is when Jake Gyllenhaal is like following him, and he's outside of the like liquor store or whatever, and then he's been gone 6 days, like, well, or how many days, like yelling. He's like, "Sorry if I'm not acting how I'm supposed to be acting." Like he's like screaming at him at the car because he's like, tell me how I'm supposed to act because I don't know, and what I'm doing, I don't sleep. My wife's saying like everything's at me. Like, please tell me how I'm supposed to be acting in this situation because this is the best I got. And it's so truth. And you're like, you kind of like Jake Gyllenhaal's just doing his job and doing the best he can, but there's no peace and there's nothing you can give to that parent at that time to like everything's going to be all right. Like it's been days, you still don't have your kid. I think Paul Dano plays like a perfect like. It makes sense why he's been cast like in future things. It's just a fucking creepy weirdo at this point. Like it's all set up. Like no wonder he's the Riddler in the Batman. Like that makes perfect sense. Like him whispering to him like when he's around the cops and basically painting the picture like Hugh Jackman's crazy when it's not. Like I think it does a really good job. I think this is a conversation we can have in this movie too about like Denis Villeneuve and like where he is like in that rank of like creating a movie and where people sit on it. Because I think regardless if he creates something that you're into, he puts it all out. Like he does a really good job of whatever he's painting. So I'm curious where everybody sits. This is like a top 100 movie for me. Like I absolutely love this movie. And again, this is one of those weird things. It's a hard movie to watch. I watch it way too many times than I'm supposed to. I already know that. There's something about it that it's like a car wreck, and I just keep going back to it. But I know how Jack feels.
I'll get my one specific criticism out of the way, and Kirk will back me up. Jake Gyllenhaal driving with a head wound at night in the snow on roads in Pennsylvania. He flips that fucking car in 12 seconds. There's no way he makes that drive.
Yeah.
Aside from that,
I'm like, call this in. Why are you calling this in? Why are you driving? But no, I would say the one thing I would say about this movie, I know they're starting, I think next year, is it next year they're going to give out casting Oscars? If retroactively, if they could do that, I would give it to this movie because Paul Dano, I'm sure, is a wonderful human being in real life. But if you tell me Paul Dano character is a child predator, I'm going to believe you regardless of the evidence presented. That's just a fact. I'm sorry. And then that's what I was gonna say. And then the movie needs to pivot suspicion away from Paul Dano, and they get the one guy that can out-creep Paul Dano, Davis Desmelchin. So I mean, just perfect casting there. But no, I think it's a really good movie. I think, like you said, like watch this as a parent is rough because it's just such like it's the nightmare version of parenting. Like I think about the scene where like the wife is like, "Why can't you save her?" And like her putting that on him is just like, "Oh my God!" Like, what do you do in that situation? Like this is like now been made, whether you want or not, your responsibility. And so like you understand what he's going through, and I think it does a really good job of taking the point of view from him and also from Detective Loki and showing both of them what they're trying to do and how they're trying to present it. So yeah, I think Villeneuve made that statement a couple months ago where he's like, movies should be all visuals and no dialogue. And I'm like, dude, you make Prisoners, and that's a pretty good dialogue and story driven movie. So I don't know what you're talking about.
He also made Sicario. Like he just like he says stuff that just contradicts what he like. If you've now transitioned, fine. But don't tell me you can't do this. Like, you've done this. Like, and done it well. John
One more
or
Pennsylvania point. I don't know how Hugh Jackman researched this role, but blue collar Pennsylvanian, he nailed it. Like I know 20 of those guys. But yeah, the movie itself, I agree. I think my daughter is the same age as the girls in those movies, so that's crazy. Yeah, it was a rough watch. Just watching him go through that. I don't own any guns, so I would have handled it a little differently. But yeah, it was an incredible ride all the way through, like all the way to the very, very end. Like
have you seen this movie prior?
This is my first watch, and Melissa Leo. Let me just throw another person you always know what you're going to get when she's in a movie. Like from her very first role in Dead Time Stories until now, playing a creepy mother hits the nail on the head every time.
Jack.
Yeah, this movie is one of my favorites of all time. I believe it was also on the list that I submitted. At some point in time, Hugh Jackman in this movie was my favorite performance in film. That's no longer the case. However, I still think this is his best performance and absolutely incredible on every level. I love, like you said it before, Cody. I'm gonna lean into it because it's true. Deakins shoots the fuck out of this movie, and I love it. He is such an incredible cinematographer, and there's so many moments where I'm just like, that's a nice shot. That's a really nice shot. But it's the performances that keep me coming back to this movie. Like, I've seen this movie more than most sane people probably have. That's just something that I do a lot. Check how many times I've watched Requiem for a Dream. Anyway, this movie is brilliant. The characters in this movie are all like, they feel like believable, just authentic human beings. Keller Dover is Hugh Jackman as Keller Dover is incredible. Maria Bello is quietly giving an incredible performance in this film as his wife. Dylan, I'm not a father yet. Thank Christ, I'd be a terrible father. But I'm not a father. But to watch this movie as an older brother is terrifying, because I can just imagine being in Dylan Minette's shoes in this film, where he can't do shit, and it's just absolutely terrifying. Paul Dano is fantastic as Alex Jones. Maria Bello, or not Maria Bello, I already said her. Melissa Leo is terrifying. If I could go back and she'd probably be my second favorite performance in this movie. Going back a couple years to YLS. Her last line of make sure they cremate me because I don't want to be buried in some box or something like that is killing. I love this movie on every level. It's one of my 20 favorites and my second favorite from Denis Villeneuve. Like, incredible filmmaker, and there's only one movie that he's made that I think is better. And it's a top 20.
Do we have a new spoiler of what is number one now?
Can
you make that
it's Insandy. It's the movie it's Insandy, the movie he made before this one. Fucking devastating. If you haven't seen it, go in as blind as possible.
Wait, that's your number one performance? I'm talking about performance.
Oh, performance? Oh, I don't know. I'm still making that list. It's going to be a while till it's up. Sorry.
I was hoping that was a roundtable exclusive. We'll have him back on the show, and don't reveal that until
the first one I tell.
Thank you. I want that exclusive. No, but yeah, I what makes me, like, when I'm driving around, like, if there's a creepy RV anywhere, I just just give a ring, just like, hey, you want to check this out? I don't trust it at all, but it's always like curiosity, like weird thing, like send your kids outside just to play. It's like, yeah, something a dad like should be pretty easily. Now it's just like, I know where, like, my town's pretty, but again, you never know, and it's always that freaky like feeling. So it doesn't capture that really well. I think they do it super well. And like, even like I think it's parents that you don't know how to act in this situation at all. Like even when he's got them all like tied up, like in the thing, and the other like they see him, they're like, yeah, like I wouldn't do that, but you know what? Like at this point, like if you can get the information, let's see if you can get the information. So.
And I liked how they have like the other parents who are like probably like what most people would do, kind of like just sit back and trust the police. Terrence Howard's character, like kind of more timid, just not going to make that out. And I like the way they set Hugh Jackman's character up at the beginning, talking about like there's going to come a time when it's up to you. You have to be the one to do it. You have to be. He makes that line about the only thing between you and being dead is you. And how that kind of plays into his whole character, and you see the opposite in Terrence Howard, and you kind of he's a foil for him in that you see just how out of whack he is. And then Viola Davis, who we talked about, again another small role for her as a mother of a kid in trouble. She's really good. And I really like the relationship between her and Terrence Howard, how she just kind of like takes over and starts making the decisions as soon as she finds out what's going on.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Crazy. I just realized I think both my kids are the same ages as the kids in this movie because my son is a teenager.
Oh wow,
he would have been absolutely useless in the.
Yeah, I think about my kids. Screwed, like done. But yeah, it's a thing. But it's like, I just think it's really interesting. Like even this, like we had Red Shoes from 1948. We have a movie from the 30s coming up, and then 2013 it still sits there. So I'm curious, like where this ranks in like top 100, like our greatest films. Like I don't know. Like again, I'm not one of those people that believe age has to be something. Like it has to be a certain how many years have to pass for it to cross the line. Like good is good. Like at that point. So. What were your guys' takes? Like, is there any hesitation? Could you get why somebody would consider it one of those, or where are we at?
Oh yeah, like I don't make lists per se because I know I'm always going to see more movies and it's going to screw up my lists, or I'm going to forget something. So I don't make lists as a rule. But if somebody were to put this like in like their top whatever, make the number as small as possible. I understand you because as far as movies that I like, this has all the components of stuff I look for. Like it has all the technical stuff I look for, plus just like. It's a thriller, and I think I'm a thriller kind of guy. And it takes enough twists that are like believable in real time with the way the characters are interacting with each other. There's even a point in time when like you think Hugh Jackman's the dude because when the girl wakes up from her mini coma, she basically incriminates him. And so like there's just enough twists that you're not like getting sick. And then the resolution is great. I think it's all together like a hot movie. I'm down with Prisoners.
Yeah, again, it's not one that I would have on a list, and I mean it's a dark horse pick, but you need some of those. Like, it's a good movie to have for that. I think it's a good pick for that, something kind of out of left field, but still a really quality movie, and worth talking about and worth having on a list. So yeah, I mean, I can't see this ever cracking like a top whatever list for me personally, but I don't, I'm not going to be upset about it being here.
And Jack pretty much described why it would be there for him. I'm curious, like in the next 10 years, like where we know where Denis is now, like where is he in 10 years? Like he is now I think he's now safely entering that Tarantino, Nolan, like director makes a movie, you're at least going to go check it out to see what he does. It may not be your cup of tea. I wonder if how much franchisee, because is he staying with Dune for a while? I guess is that what, like how many Dune movies are there going to be? Do we know?
I think at least one more, Jack. Is that right?
I think he's doing Messiah, and then he's done with Dune.
Okay, so like, if I want him, I would encourage him. Please listen to me, Mr. Villeneuve. I would encourage him to go back outside of franchises. Like I would like him to be outside of the franchises. That would be my favorite thing. Okay. Star rating on this one. First time we'll go John, just see what John's first watch was.
Like I said, it hit me everywhere. I love thrillers like this. Like if a thriller is like this, it's very hard to sway me away from like above a 4-star rating. But this was a 5-star movie for me, just because the performances were all great. Yeah, like everybody we mentioned, like every single person we mentioned, knew the assignment, killed the assignment. And the fact that it's set in Pennsylvania kind of, even if I can go above 5 stars, I would. 5 stars.
I know somebody else that's very much like that. If it has any Pennsylvania connections, somebody gives it a little bit more edges than normal.
On an unrelated note,
yeah,
no, I definitely feel like it definitely had, like, if you want to do bleak, do Pennsylvania winter. Like if you want a bleak aesthetic, that's where you go. And I think that really that captures that well, that whole setting. But no, I think, like I said, it's not an all timer for me. I give it a 3.5, which is a good rating for me. I think that means it's a good movie. But yeah, I think it's fine on this top 100.
Okay, last movie of the night, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I think this movie is absolutely crazy, and not like bad, but like this movie came out in 1939, and I think it's as relevant as a movie that has ever came out, like ever. Like we have still not learned from our past like mistakes as a country in almost 90 years. Like that's crazy to me. Like I sat there and like watched it and like I'm not talking bad about Jimmy Stewart. Like I'm not the Jimmy Stewart guy. There are people that are Jimmy Stewart guys that are not here tonight. But my take is he does do a little bit of the overacting things, like a little bit animated at times, and that's of the time. So he gets a pass from me on that one. But I mean, we would be lying if that filibuster scene is not like one of those scenes that are still like absolutely just incredible moments. And the feeling of Congress back then and how it feels like just as similar today, like basically it opens with the exact way of like sending a politician to make sure that they do the bidding of the group that's sending him instead of or send someone new so they can just basically corrupt them for the next 20 years to keep it going. Don't send an older person, send the younger person. I think it's just super fascinating. I get kind of the chills every time I watch this movie because I'm just like, man, I don't think our country, and this is not going to get into a whole political thing, but I don't think our country has been more political than it is right now. Like in my lifetime growing up, it's so political nowadays. But I'm just like, and how relevant this movie is. Did anybody watch this for the first time? John. I figured it was John. So what were your takes on watching this for the very first time? Because do you seek out classics at all?
Here and there. Like actually ever since I joined this community, I'd say yes. Prior to, no. If it just happened to happen, I would do it. But I agree with everything you said. Like this movie is absolutely important now. It does mirror what's going on today. I do think it has like that. I mean, I have seen It's a Wonderful Life, so I do know like Capra-esque stuff. So it has a lot of that. A lot of that happens. So if you don't like that, you're not going to like this movie. But it's forgivable given the context. The only weird thing that like totally took me out of the movie was like at the very end of the movie when the evil conglomerate is like running all the news stories, and then the Boy Scouts are running their news stories, and they send out like the Union Busters like beat the shit out of the kids. I was like, come on! But aside from that, this movie is like totally a movie everybody should watch. You should watch this movie if you haven't seen it. If you're like me, watch this movie.
Yeah, I don't think I'm the Jimmy Stewart guy. I call myself a Jimmy Stewart guy. Speaking of,
that's Koho and Boatman. You're not the Jimmy Stewart.
I'm a guy. I don't need to be the guy. I'm a guy. And speaking of Pennsylvania, Indiana, PA native, we claim him in the Pittsburgh metro area as one of our own.
I've been in the museum as well. Yes, I've been
nice.
There.
Yeah. But I think it's I think it's like what's cool about this movie. It's basically like two halves. Like I think the first half is like that like stereotypical what you think of as a Jimmy Stewart movie. And you get that performance from him, that like wide-eyed, like kind of like bumpkin kind of performance that, the Jimmy Stewart performance. And then, once he kind of gets an idea what's going on, it becomes more like a political drama, and it turns, and his performance turns and becomes more grounded. And I think that's similar to how he is, and he plays those two kind of roles in It's a Wonderful Life as well. But I think that's what's really cool about it is you get that, everybody calls this, it's a cheesy Frank Capra movie. And that second half of that movie is rough. Like John, was alluding to, like, there's like, they do violence to children to, suppress the news getting out that they don't want to get out. There's a lot of things. And ultimately, if you watch this movie, he loses. Jimmy Stewart loses. He does not succeed on his own merits of what he's trying to do. The system beats him down. It's only because of Claude Rains' character, admitting to his guilt, that things go the right way. And that's why I watch this movie. Like, I don't think this movie's about, like, I don't think it's about him. I think it's about Claude Rains, and to a lesser extent, Gene Arthur's characters, where they are these, like, embittered, jaded Washington figures who are kind of waiting for Jimmy Stewart to show up, waiting for somebody who they can believe in. They want to believe that they just can't anymore because they've been ground down by the machine. And I think the changes you see in them and the arc those characters have, I think, is really what this movie's about. And but I mean, Jimmy Stewart's so great, and that filibuster scene is amazing. But I think it's Claude Rains' movie.
No, I agree. I agree with you on that one, Jack.
Yeah, no, I love this movie. Jimmy Stewart is giving a fantastic performance, and yes, especially in that filibuster sequence where he's just talking over, like, for hours on end. I think that's a really impressive performance. It's not my favorite Capra Stewart collaboration. That's definitely It's a Wonderful Life, but this is a close second.
Color or non-color?
Non-color. I saw it. It doesn't make it. Like, it's whatever.
I don't think you've watched the movie, though. It does make it.
Okay, that's your prerogative. But no, I think that this movie is fantastic, and as a Canadian, kind of interesting to get a look into our neighbors down south. Definitely an interesting perspective to have on this movie. But no, I think it's fantastic. Really, I don't want to bring up the Oscars, but, like, his Oscar win the next year feels like an apology because he should have won for this, and he's incredible in this. But can't really say the same thing about Philadelphia Story. But that's just me. He's incredible, and in my opinion, this movie lives and dies on this performance. Not to say that everyone else isn't doing great work, like Claude Rains, Jean Arthur, they're both great, but Jimmy Stewart's on another level here. Love it.
I actually really like Claude Rains in this movie. I think he gets overshadowed because of Jimmy Stewart's, like, performance, but his overall, like, how his arc in this movie is insane. Like, where he's sitting at the front and, like, my dad mentioned he's the greatest man that's like the greatest man ever, and then he's in the thing. I just love Jimmy Stewart the entire time, and, like, his relationship with who plays the female lead. I don't know her name.
Jean Arthur.
Like, Jean Arthur. Like, they work so well together. Like, her having to coach him through the stuff to, like, make sure he's good at it. Like, it's crazy. Like, if you ever see Congress now, it's just direct image of, like, where it is still. Like, it looks the exact same. It's crazy. But how they're all back and forth, they're having that conversation. But, like, how it ended up, like, him not being able to accept, like, people asking questions. Like, I'll only ask for, like, he will not give it up. Like, it's just a brilliant. And, like, at the end, he's like, well, of the senators, what seems to just be me, and then everybody else is, like, gone, and he's still there. It's such interesting. And it's like, again, I've said it before, but, like, for this movie, 1939, to, like, and we've learned nothing. We have learned nothing as a political group ever since then. It's crazy. It's sad. It's crazy. But this movie has, like, so much, like, the only thing I'm guilty of is being framed. Like, I'm the fall guy in this entire situation. Like, that's all this is, because I didn't bend the knee and agree to your plan. Like, so it didn't win. What won Best Picture this year?
That year was Gone with the Wind, 1939.
Get out of here. Kick rocks. Like, I get people like, that movie's so fucking boring. It's just, this movie deserved it. I don't know. But
I agree. This movie deserved it more.
But yeah, I'm not a Jimmy Stewart guy. I'm not a Frank Capra guy, but I do like going back and seeing it. I think this is important. I think it's a little long, a little bit, but nothing I hate too much on. Anything else we want to say on this movie before we get started?
I think another performance I'd like to point out is Thomas Mitchell. I think he's just like the great character actor of this generation, and like he just kind of has that like energy of like, you know, he brings like the realism, but he also has like the heart, and he's another one of those characters that just like jaded, but is also like a decent person. I just love his interactions with Gene Arthur and the relationship they have together. And I think he's a really cool character. And did he win for Stagecoach this year, Jack?
Stagecoach would have been 39, yeah, but I couldn't tell you if he won.
So I mean, he was in this, he was in Stagecoach, and he was in Gone with the Wind all this year, and probably other ones because the guy worked a ton. But he just, I think he's just so great and so charming in this movie, just a really good addition to it.
Okay, so we'll get scores on this one. Jack.
5 stars. Great film.
And what was your question about Thomas Mitchell?
What year he won supporting actor?
Yeah, he won it for Stagecoach.
Okay.
2 people were from Claude Rains and Harry Carey were from supporting actor from this movie. John.
I think it's an important movie. Like I said, I set it on 4 stars only because like I don't think I was supposed to laugh when they turned to fire hose and the children, but I did, and that kind of took me out of the movie a little bit. Also, just the melodrama and all, but like it's still a great and important movie. It's 4 stars for me.
It's 4.5 for me. It's dropped just a little bit overall, but it's still a great movie. Kirk.
Yeah, and Harry Carey too. Another great performance is the president of the Senate. A real small, like quiet role, but a lot of like subtle work he's doing there in his interactions with the characters, and kind of playing like if it was a courtroom, he'd be the judge, and I think he's really important. He does it well. But I'm bumping this one up, I think, to a 4.5.
I just never knew the announcer for the Cubs was in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It's kind of crazy. But the more you know. All right, so we're going to get ratings. So these are the movies that you can choose from. So everybody grab your boards, or we'll go to Jack first each time. This is what you want at the 5th spot. So your choices, again, are Scream, Saving Private Ryan, The Red Shoes, Prisoners, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So what you want at your 5th spot?
Do you want me to just go now or wait for...
No, I'll just wait until everybody's been writing, and then you can go. You'll go first each time.
Okay.
Let me know when you are ready, John.
I know. I'm going to say I'm writing it all down. So you start.
Jack, what is your 5th?
My 5th place is The Red Shoes. It's the only movie here that's not 5 stars. Like for me, I have a lot of 5-star movies. It's a 4.5, and it's incredibly well made. But of this batch, sitting at 5.
I swore that was going to climb up here because of you, and because Kirk's hate for the other thing. John.
The Red Shoes.
Okay.
You know what?
Okay, and Kirk. You're muted.
I said, Bill, I miss you. Get well soon. Scream.
Okay. So Red Shoes is number 5. Now you're number 4. And be sure to write it down and then turn the board over.
If that's what you want me to
You're
do.
good. You're good.
I wrote them all down.
I figured that was the case, but you're fine. Just to not influence any changing, just to link it up. Not that it matters in the slightest. Okay, we are going to go to Kirk first. What's your 4?
Scream.
What? No. John.
Wait, you did Scream twice?
So this is the overall group you're ranking. So the Red Shoes is 5th on you guys' list.
Yeah, the Red Shoes locked it at 5. Now we're doing 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So nobody can pick the right shoes now. Okay, my number
Yeah.
4 is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Okay. And then I'm gonna have to break this if it's not. But Jack.
No need to break it. My number 4 is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Okay. I forgot to go to Jack first. That's my bad. I don't think he changed it, but that should have been different. Okay. And then, all right, now this is your number 3. I thought Mr. Smith would go number 1. That's interesting.
I'm not Koho.
All right. That's fair. I think Kirk wishes you were. In this regard, we'll go Jack first. What's your 3?
My 3 is Scream.
Kirk.
Take it out back and shoot in the head.
Scream, and John.
I went Saving Private Ryan.
Okay. All right, so this is what you want in number 1. So, Prisoners or Saving Private Ryan? Which one is number 1? I'm curious what Jack will put, but Jack.
I mean, you should be able to guess.
Okay. Prisoners, okay. John.
I'm also at Prisoners.
Okay, and I'm guessing Saving Private Ryan. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So, there it is. We are moving along. All right, so I want to thank everybody for being on. I wish we would have got that Scream honestly saved us on runtime because that Scream from Bill probably still be going on right now. If I was to guess, like he would still be like we would move on to Mr. Smith. Well, let me tell you about that piece of shit movie, Scream. But that's a list. All right, for next week or next episode that we will be on, we are going to go through 76 through 80. Those movies are On the Waterfront at 76, The Prestige 77, Mulholland Drive at 78, Singing in the Rain 79, and Chef 2014 Chef at 80. Pray for Kirk. Not going to have a good time next week. Not going to have a good time at all. But he'll be here, so that'll be fun. But I want to thank John. I want to thank check out Why We Love Horror. He has a bunch of stuff on that channel. He has trivia. He has horrible movies that he makes that people watch and talk about how bad it is. Versus, right? Versus.
Yep. Versus.
So go check out this channel. He does great things. And Jack, are you still doing something? Are you do short things or something?
Not anymore. Used to do a show with Melissa and Alex, but not this year.
Okay.
What about your podcast?
So
Oh yeah, fuck yeah. I forgot I could plug that. Yeah, Shortcuts. Movies 90 minutes or less. It's a great time. A show with Boatman, Spence, and Matthew Chen, and it's a good time. Talking about short and sweet movies. Under 90 minutes.
None of these would have made the list.
No.
They could not watch any of the movies that we watched this week. So, good thing you could talk about this. All right. So we will check you next time. Bye.